To me, self-love is going back to when you were born, because we all are just light and love. And it's not I love myself more than you, I'm better than anyone, I'm not any worse than anyone. It's just having the love for the soul that you are, not the body that you were giving, not the looks, because that's not who you are, not your name, not your profession, your essence. I love my essence. It's just about having an appreciation for there's no flaws within you. It's just it's you're just light and love at the end of the day.
Brad, what's the biggest limiting belief that holds people back from achieving either success or happiness in the way that you define it?
Yeah, it always comes back to I am not enough. Some level, it may be you feel real bad and you're addicted to meth or other things, or you just have a slight level of I'm not enough, and it affects like how you deal with your kids or your relationships, or you don't work out as much. So that's the number one limiting belief I have seen over and over and over again, is this feeling that we're not enough.
And where does that stem from? What's the root of I guess a subconscious, or is that even an unconscious belief in some people?
So almost always, because not almost always. Let me rephrase that. No one was ever born not feeling enough. So something happened in their childhood, and your brain is, the most formative years of your brain are between like 0 and 10. So something happened to that person as a child, and they had to come up with a meaning on why this thing happened, right? My parents are getting divorced. My dad's never around. My dad hit me with a belt or made fun of me, like in my case. Why is this happening to me? Well, I must be bad. We as children have to take it on ourselves, because if our caregivers are the ones that are messed up, like we're completely screwed. If mom and dad are messed up, I'm done, because they're the ones who keep me alive, right? So anytime divorces, parents fighting, there's no money, the kid takes it on as themselves, because guess what? If I'm bad or I'm not enough, all I've got to do is be better, and then dad will stop hitting me, stop making fun of me, and stop loving me, or start loving me. So it actually works really well as a child. But when you're 47 years old and you smoke weed every day and you drink and you buy a 42-foot boat to sail to the Bahamas when you don't even know how to read a chart, like this guy speaking, it doesn't serve you too well.
Yeah, no, we're definitely going to get into to your audience. I mean, not to your audience, to your backstory here a little bit. But our audience, the guys listening right now, they're driven guys, like, right? I say our approach to recovery is growth centric. So the guys that are attracted to the message that I try to put out into the world are guys that are driven to achieve more. So I'm curious with this, like, I'm not enough belief system. Like, how do you balance that between believing that you're not enough, but also knowing that there's more for you?
Such a fabulous question. I thought you were going to go a different direction and ask me, if you don't feel enough, how are you going to be driven? Because that's what a lot of my clients and people I talk to. Well, if I stop beating myself up, I'm going to stop making millions of dollars. No. Here's how everything shifted in my life 3 years ago when I went through my transformation. Is for 47 years, I thought money was going to bring me freedom and happiness and worthiness. And what I learned is that you have everything you ever need to be happy inside of you, and nothing outside will ever bring you freedom and happiness and worthiness. So when I realized that, when I realized that I was always enough, and it was my parents that made me feel that way, I was just like, oh my gosh, this weight, Frank, literally just lifted off my chest. And I was like, I don't have to prove anything anymore. So now what? Well, guess what? Now I'm going to focus on making an impact. So now these last 3 years, I have seen exponential growth in my finances, in my health, in my relationships, because I have focused on making an impact rather than trying to make money for the sake of making myself feel good.
Okay, yeah. Well, let's circle back then to maybe your question that you thought I was going to. So I think that's kind of what you answered there, right? Is like, if you're focused on the material that's going to create the happiness, that's the belief that like you're not enough right now to be happy. And maybe that's the better thing that we need to define. Are we talking as happiness as the goal and aim, or like, is that what we're chasing? Are we chasing being happy? Because that's a decision away. Like you said, nothing in the external world is going to make you happy. That's got to come from within. So if we accept that, then we focus on value first, the material will continue to exponentially grow.
Yes. So I think so many entrepreneurs like myself got into business and said, okay, I've got to go make $10 million or a million, whatever your number is, and then I'm going to be happy. Well, the irony is that you can get to that state today without a million or $10 million in your bank account. And then when you get to that state today, the chances of you making a million or $10 million have just gone through the roof because money doesn't bring you happiness. Studies have shown that happiness actually brings you money. So the more fulfilled, the more content, the more purpose driven you are at what you're doing, the more money that you're going to make. I've done very well in real estate for the last 22 years. I have a feeling that if we are on this podcast in 5 years, I'm going to tell you that I'm making more money from this venture than I ever did from real estate because real estate was always a way to make me feel better, that make me feel worthy, make me feel happy. This, I just have such a unending desire and thirst to learn more about it because I've never come across a subject. And the subject specifically is the brain and how it functions. I've never found anything in my life, Frank, that I found more interesting.
Brad, who were you growing up? Like, can we go back into your story a little bit and like talk about young Brad, kind of like as much as you're willing to maybe kind of share about upbringing? Because I think a lot of people are going to hear this, right? And they're like, Brad, it sounds great, right? You've had some financial success. I know in order to lose $9 million, you've had to make probably more than, right. So you're speaking to this like having gone through a journey of achieving some financial success and then looking back and saying, hey, maybe there's another way to do this. But a guy that's maybe at the beginning of that journey and is struggling to even maybe get by on a month-to-month basis. He's like, Brad, how do I create happiness when like I got to keep the heat on, I got to keep the bills due? So can you kind of maybe walk through your evolution of your journey that's led you to kind of this breakthrough?
Yeah, I'm going to answer your second question, then we'll go back to me because I think it's really, really important to understand that I believe that every problem in this world that we experience, whether it's addiction or the wars or a hospitals being full or 100 million Americans on an antidepressant or anti-anxiety drug, uh, you just name it, every problem is our mind thinking that it's preventing us from something even worse. And when we go and do the deep digging and we figure out this something that we think is worse that's driving negative behavior, it always is a untruth formed in childhood to get you through a stressful situation. And when you can show your brain that, guess what happens to the negative behavior? It goes away. That's just the way it works. It's called memory reconsolidation. You literally can rewrite the new neural pathways. So why is someone suffering or struggling financially? Do you know that the difference in IQ between like a mid-level manager at a Walmart and a Fortune 500 CEO, do you know how close they are? What is the difference? The difference is how they think. So I believe that if you're struggling, unless you have autism or have some learning disability, you can't figure out how to read or make money, which is very few of us. I believe that you're struggling financially because of the same limiting beliefs that we're talking about. So how do you solve that? How do you fix it? How do you get out of jail? How do you get out of prison? You have to know, number one, that you're in prison in the first place, right? So for 47 years, Frank, I had no idea that I was in prison. Two marriages, they didn't work out. Well, everyone gets divorced. 50%, 70%. Third marriages, it's 70% get divorced. Kids with anxiety. Who doesn't have kids with anxiety? Lots of people. Smoke weed every night. So what? It's from the earth, man. Smoke it up. I had no idea I was in prison until I went to get my son help for his anxiety. I did some major work. And then I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh. And now, 3 years later, Frank, I look back and I'm like, the life I used to live, I would pay any amount of money not to go back there. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I wonder if I have some of these limiting beliefs, do yourself and your family and your health and your business a favor. Go take this 3-minute quiz on my website, unlocklimitlessyou.com/quiz, and just see where you stand. And then with all change begins with awareness. That's how you can change. And that may be how you get out of the financial living paycheck to paycheck hole that you're in right now.
Guys, we'll have that quiz link down there in the show notes for all of you. It's unlocklimitlessyou.com, I think is where he said it, but we'll have the direct link to the quiz for you in the show notes. Brad, how many people are in a prison and don't know it?
I don't know, but there's segments of the population. I would say, based on my last 3 years of doing this work, I would say probably half of people are in prison and have no idea. Then you've got, of the 50% left, you've got people that definitely know they're in prison, but they're like, I'm going the drug route because that's what my doctor tells me, or I am I'm too scared, or I've tried therapy and that shit doesn't work. So none of those are good buckets. And then you've got 1% of the population, or probably less, that are closer to being enlightened. And what does enlightened mean? It means the light within, which we all have. We don't let other people and situations bother us. We take care of ourselves. We're not in a triggered state. There's no proverbial lion chasing us. You're in a really good place in your life.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that as well. Um, so your story, you've dropped some, nuggets here, something about a boat, child, son, anxiety. You kind of reached, I think, a turning point, two divorces. Can you kind of walk us, as far back as you feel needs to go through that evolution? And then what I guess was really kind of I don't know if it's a defining moment. I don't know if there was an awakening in your life. Was it something spiritual that kind of took place? Like, was it rock bottom? Was it rock top? Because like I've noticed that, in interviewing, 260 plus guys now, it's oftentimes the transformation comes at either rock bottom or a rock top. I sold a company for 50 million. I'm sitting on the beach drinking a Mai Tai, and it's like, this is it. This is all that life is about. And then they had this kind of awakening. So for you, as much as you feel needs to be, shared about the upbringing, the journey, the real estate, and then that kind of key defining moment in your life.
Yeah, so both my parents had issues from their childhood, unbeknownst to me as a child, of course, as you look at your parents and they're like they're heroes. They're the ones who keep you alive. Um, so my parents fought a lot. There was a lot of money issues in the house. My mom was save, 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 save. My dad was spend, 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 spend. My mom used to say filthy rich. I asked her that a couple years ago. I go, why would you describe people as filthy rich? And she's like, I don't even know. So she had this thing about money. Let's hoard it because we're going to run out of it. Dad was just like, let's spend it like crazy. So they fought about money all the time. So I had lots of money issues in my life. And that's probably literally why I lost $9 million. It probably also spurred me to make a lot of money. Lots and lots of fighting. Dad would hit me with a belt. Dad would make fun of me. I would get made fun of. I had a big head as a child, and people used to call me watermelon head, pumpkin head. And then I had to come home. My dad would, he would make fun of me and laugh. Look, he was doing the best he could. I mean, I don't think he understood how bad it hurt me. And now knowing he's passed on, but now knowing how insecure and how much he hated himself, I think it made him feel better to put down anyone, not just me, but anyone. So lots of fighting. At 10 years old, finally the divorce happened. Remember, my mom sat me down on the couch, and I think she thought I was gonna be really upset. And I was like, great, like let's get rid of that ass. But then the payment stopped, right? And so my mom was a nurse at the time, working two jobs. And there was one point in time when I was 10 where she said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep the house. We may have to move into this Garrett Square public housing in Charlottesville. And I had heard as a child, I'd been there with her, and she told me they were shooting. So in my head, I was thinking, oh my gosh, we don't have money. So I'm going to move into public housing and I'm going to die. So that was my learned emotional behavior as a kid, that if you don't have money, you die. So in ninth grade, I read a book on how to buy real estate with no money down. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to do real estate. I didn't know why. I did remember saying it's unlimited income, but I didn't know why unlimited income was so important to me. It was a survival thing. It was, I need money to survive. So that's my childhood in a nutshell. If you fast forward to age 47, my son had anxiety because of me and because of the wife that I picked, his mother. Because when you have issues and you have these limiting beliefs, or you lack self love, there's no way you're going to match with someone that has no trauma and has extreme self love, because that person would spend like 5 or 10 minutes with you and say, nah, I'm good. I'm out of here. So because of that, my son and my daughter had anxiety. And in the process of trying to get help, I was on a call, and the lady, the performance coach, she was like, do you realize you have a tick? I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, you blink like crazy when you talk about your childhood. You may have unresolved childhood trauma that's causing your son's anxiety. And that was what led me. She was like, do you want to come out and work with me and my ex Navy SEAL husband? And I did. And after going to therapy for 30 years, Frank, in 3 hours, everything changed. Like it trumped all the 30 years of therapy and the 56 marriage counseling sessions I went to.
Yeah. Was that Coach Ani Yach?
Yes. Yes.
I love Ani. Great. I love Larry even more. I love both of them equally, actually. In case you guys are listening to this, I love you guys both. Yeah, they've been both been on the podcast. Larry's been on 3 times, and Ani has been on twice. I spent quite a bit of time with her, so that's amazing. When you said ex Navy SEAL husband, I instantly knew who it was because that's their space that they operate in. Guys, we'll link all those episodes down there in the show notes for anybody that hasn't checked those out because we unpacked a lot of childhood trauma with Ani. Um, Happiness, right? I can remember. So my parents got separated when I was 15, and I saw probably many of the similar things that you did. It wasn't that the most happy home. We always had the things that we needed. There was a lot of frustration and arguments, and I saw my dad struggle because I lived with him from 15 until I was out of the house, and he had his own demons that he was fighting. And the thing that I recall the most while he was going through his struggles and challenges was this saying that I just want to be happy. And I think as I've grown and gotten into this work, like we talked about brief at the beginning, it's just a decision that you make. And in fact, I don't believe that you're going to be happy all the time. I think happiness is an emotion. What I aim and shoot for is peace and joy, because I think those are states that you can operate from. You can be unhappy and be at peace. Dog dies, you're not going to be happy about that, but you can be at peace with it. So I guess I'm curious, maybe the definition of happy and kind of your work. Is it actually something that is a desirable aim, or is it not the proper thing that we should be shooting for?
I don't think happiness is a choice. When you've got these underlying limiting beliefs that are telling you that you're not enough, that you're not smart enough, fast enough, lovable enough, whatever it is, I think it's really hard to be happy. Now, if you look at my first 47 years, would I say I was an unhappy person? Um, I was happy for most of the time, and I was always pretty much a positive person. But I did watch the news, and I got into fights over politics online too. So you can be happy at times. What is the definition of happy to me? I'm wearing a shirt that says "Be addicted to self-love." Childhood trauma takes you out of connection with yourself. Through the work that I do and you do, we help individuals reconnect with themselves. You can't connect to other human beings if you're not connected to yourself. So I think that happiness is being connected to yourself and feeling the inner love that always existed, but you've had to dampen and put up filters because of the shit that you went through in your childhood.
Yeah. So without getting maybe too in the weeds here with the work that you do, which guys, check out the quiz. We'll link Brad's website to their coaching as well. If it's not a choice, what's the process, from a tactical standpoint, right? Like maybe the first kind of series of steps that somebody can take if they've identified, I'm just not happy, and in what Brad is saying, I'm resonating with it. I've tried the just say that you're happy. I've tried the affirmations. I've done all the the self help type of stuff here. Like what's different in the way that you approach it?
Yeah, we hear that all the time, Frank. I mean, so many people have come to me and said, I went to every Tony Robbins training there was. I read all his books. They're like, I knew what I should have done, but I just couldn't do it. The reason is because most traditional talk therapy and most of the life coaches and the motivators and the therapists out there, they focus on the conscious mind. But the conscious mind and the symptoms that your problems create are only responsible for 5% of your behavior. 95% of your behavior on a daily basis is driven by your subconscious mind. So we use hypnosis, we use memory consolidation, we use things from thousands of years, ago, where we mind body spirit connection. We talked about the prison earlier. We have to be aware what is causing the issues that you want to end. So you go to a traditional talk therapist and you go in with anxiety, and they say that's the problem. Well, that's actually the solution again to something that's worse. But most therapists and life coaches never get there. Oh, you have anxiety. Well, let's talk about breathing exercises. Let's talk about doing some yoga. That will lessen your anxiety at some point, but as soon as something triggers you from the old, you're going to be right back into it. So what we do that's different is we get into the subconscious mind using hypnosis, and we figure out, where did these things start? What were the meanings that you placed? And then we tell your mind the true story, and you can't hold two conflicting thoughts. So the mismatch detector goes off, ding, 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 ding. And your brain's like, well, I can't hold these two thoughts. What's true? And then the true literally overwrites the neural pathways and then the negative behavior. So that's how we're different than, gosh, I think there's only 1% of the of the healer community that's actually doing this stuff.
Yeah. I think with a subconscious, like the way that I've tried to, which great job of kind of explaining it, 95%, that number is truly shocking, is like the goal, and this is my belief, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the goal of that subconscious mind is to make our reality match our belief system, right? So we have this belief, prime example from the beginning, right? Belief, I'm not enough. I'm not enough. 5% of us can be, you're great, you're positive, go do these things. Somewhere, chaos, stress, anxiety, life is kind of happening. This 95% takes over. Its job is to make what's happening in reality match this belief system. And that's where it's like, where the guys that we work with, it's like, I don't even know what's happening, Frank. I had a 90-day streak, right? Before I even knew it, I wasn't even aware that I was looking at the things that I said I no longer wanted to look at, because they hadn't been able to get underneath the hood yet and kind of reprogram it.
Yeah. So I'm going to say it a little bit differently. So the subconscious mind, its only purpose is to keep you alive, to move you from pain to pleasure. So the untruth, the thing that's driving the negative behavior, we can almost always trace that back to childhood. And in childhood, if you upset your parents, your mom wouldn't give you a cookie, and you told her at 5 years old that you hate her, and she cried for 2 hours, and then dad came home and spanked you and said, don't ever make mom feel that way. Then you say, oh my gosh, I made my parents mad. I need them to survive. This isn't your 5-year-old self saying this. This is your 6 million-year-old primitive brain that has evolved over 6 million years. It's like, if I hurt the people that are taking care of me, they may kick me out of the tribe. And if I get kicked out of the tribe, I die. So if you look at, I'm holding up my hands now like a foot away, 6 million years of human existence. We've only been out of tribes, and I'm now moving my like to a centimeter. Most of our evolution has been in tribes. What would happen if you get kicked out of a tribe? You would die. So I think today, whether you're shutting down when your spouse gives you feedback, whether you're eating too much, whether you have depression, anxiety, a porn addiction, whatever it may be, I can usually trace that back, or almost always, to survival. You're doing these things because you don't wake up and say, I need to drink this fifth of bourbon or I'm going to die. But your subconscious mind is saying, if you don't drink this, you're going to feel this, and then you're going to get kicked out of the tribe and you're going to die. It's fascinating to me.
You said earlier, learning about the brain and its function is what kind of changed it all to you. With Annie, with the introduction to the work here, like, when did this begin to I guess come together? Like, and what was it that was like, I gotta go deep in here, and then that process from learning, using it on yourself, and then sharing it with others. It's a big question. I wasn't even sure if it was clear.
Yeah, it was completely clear. I didn't go seek help because, remember, I thought I was just rolling along, right? I've lost millions of dollars, but I got a nice house, I got a boat. At the time I was dating a bunch of different girls, and yeah, people do that too. I just kind of like explained everything away, right? So I wasn't looking for it. I went to get my son help for anxiety. I was invited out to Park City. In that 3-hour session that Larry did, I'm laying in this outside of Park City in this Airbnb, and my life changed so profoundly that I came back and I looked around at my networks and my family and my business partners and the country club and everyone I knew. And I just thought to myself, all the struggles that they're going through is the same exact reason that I was struggling. And my life changed so profoundly. I thought, oh my gosh, if I can do it, they can do it. So I didn't come back from Park City thinking, hey, I'm going to get out of my real estate company and help people. I just came back and was just like, my mind was blown. How could I feel and operate this differently than 2 months ago, right? And so I started talking to people about my story, and I started asking them what's their story. And there's really not a person in this world barely that doesn't have some struggle on some level. And as we started talking through these struggles, these people are like, I never said that to anyone before. You're the only second person. And more people kept saying this. And then one guy's like, I'm getting more out of you than my therapist. And I'm like, wow. I started thinking, I've got to give this gift back. Like, I can't believe I was given this gift on kind of a fluke, which now I know it wasn't a fluke. Everything happened for a reason. And I believe our souls were here before, and I think they'll be here later. And I think my son actually came here to show me the pathway, right? So I started coaching people, and then I started studying. And I have spent thousands of hours in the last 3 years studying under some of the I went back out and watched Larry take another like 8 people twice through. I thought I was going to actually work with him. It just didn't work out. So I studied under Larry. I studied under Dr. Gabor Mate. I studied under Marissa Peer. Now I'm studying under. There's a bunch of people in the memory reconsolidation. Bruce Eckert. I've studied under him. So I can't get enough. I just keep learning and learning and learning more things. And each day it just keeps getting better. And as I'm learning too, Frank, like I'm not perfect. Like I'm growing. I still have my own issues. I've come a long way and I've closed that gap. But now I get to spend, if your complete brokenness, and my left hand is like a foot away from my right. I made this jump to like an inch, and now I get to spend the rest of my life in this like zone trying to close the gap. But guess what? This zone is really freaking amazing because it's very rare that I'm irritated or triggered because now I know what triggered me around those things and I can quickly bounce out of it. Whereas in the past in my relationships, it could have been days that I was stuck in this.
What was it that changed for you? You mentioned, you had this, 3-hour session with Larry, and almost instantaneously, like your words were, my life changed. Like, what was it tangible changing? Was it experiential? Was it just a perception? Was it all of the above? Was it something I didn't even mention?
Yeah. So at first, the only thing that could change are my thoughts and my perception of the world. I immediately started seeing the world as a different place where before I thought it was negative and a little scary and kind of me against them. It was just like, holy moly, like we're all one and we all share the same struggles. We all came from the same creator, and the creator didn't say, hey, I'm going to make Frank a little better than Brad. We're all the same. So that was the initial, like, oh my gosh. And the weight that I talked about was lifted off my chest. Oh my gosh, you mean it wasn't me that wasn't enough? It was how my parents felt about themselves that caused me to feel that way. Oh my gosh, what a weight is lifted. And then what transpired, everything. Now let's fast forward 3 years. I'm in a relationship with my business partner, Yvonne, best relationship I've ever been in, the most safest I've ever been in. We deal when we have conflict now, it actually brings us closer together. I'm the most active I've ever been in my life. I spend 4 hours in the gym playing pickleball and yoga and sauna and rolling and lifting. The relationship with my kids is the best as it's ever been. My net worth has gone up in these last 3 years more than any 3 year period before. I get tested by Tony Robbins every 90 days, blood test work. I've got 82 things they test for. I'm 78 ideal of this 82. I'm in the green ideal, and the rest I'm slightly below. So, I mean, yeah. And I get to wake up every day, talk to people like you, and do the work that I know God put me here to do. So I don't know what else could have changed. People have seen me. They're like, you look younger, you talk differently, you smile all the time. I used to only smile all the time when I was like drinking or using weed. Now I smile all the time.
Yeah. What role has faith or spirituality? I hear you say God, God put me here. We did a great conversation with Larry. You mentioned like the souls being here before and kind of like your son being delivered to kind of share with you. I did an entire episode on kind of how Larry came to some of these realizations in his own journey. So for you in running this transformational journey that you've been on, what's been the role of faith or spirituality and kind of the language that you use to kind of define it?
Yeah, man, I've never been asked that question. What a phenomenal question. I can't wait to share. So I grew up Catholic. I became disenfranchised from the Catholic Church because of all the shit that they've gone through. I was Episcopalian for a number of years. Then I went to a Bible-based church. I haven't been to church now in a year. I didn't like some of the things they were talking about. So with Larry, through that process, being brought up Catholic, you believe that you were born and you die and you either go to heaven, hell, or purgatory, right? I now believe that our souls were put here before. So I feel more connected to my creator than ever before. I feel more one with the universe. And even through the neuroscience of what Joe Dispenza does, like this desk I'm sitting at and this microphone, we're all energy. Like literally, like that. If you'd have told me that 5 years ago, I'd have been like, dude, you're smoking some crack or whatever. But we're all, I mean, you can go to a tree. They've done studies that show you go up to a tree pissed off, it's going to change the tree's makeup. Like something's going to, I can't tell you exactly what, but something's going to change. So I've gotten further away from religion and more into spirituality, and I don't fear death anymore. I think that we're all. I think Larry told me this one time. I don't know if he shared this with you. Incredible. He says that Jesus, heaven is all knowing. Jesus came down from heaven knowing he was going to face the traumas of the cross so that he could share his truths and the truths of the world with other people that would connect them to themselves. And then if they're connected with themselves, then they're more connected with God. So I believe that my partner Yvonne raves about this Journey of Souls book, and it talks a lot about we have a soul contract. Like everything we're going through is meant to teach us something. And I think I think it was Annie who said to my son, "You're an old soul. You've been here for a long time. You're here to teach your dad something. And without him, I wouldn't be talking to you right now." So that's how I'm a much more spiritual person. I've started studying Buddhism, and I want to make a trip. I don't have anything planned, but I want to go to India. I love it all. I love all the spiritual aspects of this.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You mentioned like you go up to a tree angry and you kind of touch it. I think they've done some studies with water as well. It kind of brings me, I don't know if you've ever, was a movie buff growing up. Like I'm not as in touch with today's movies, but I think it was the Ghostbusters 2, right? It's like they get that ooze that's kind of running under the city. And it's like they realize like it's because New York City has been taken over by evil. And it's like the water that ran below the city turns into this like slime that, can be used for good and or evil. And they bring it into the lab and they're like screaming at it. And it's like jumping out of the container because it's like, it's activated by like the evil intent. And I just think that's so true. Everything in the world is alive. I've experienced so much of that in my journey. You don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but some of your talk almost sounds, I don't want to say psychedelic by language, but in this journey with you, have you explored or used any psychedelic therapy?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that question. Let me touch on something that you just said though. Dr. Joe Gallenberger, I may mess up his name. I have a podcast called How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs, and he was on like episode 102 or something. And he's a phenomenal. You actually, if you don't know this gentleman, I saw him on Gaia. You should get him on your podcast because he's amazing. But he's done studies in Vegas where they had 20 people around a table and they were rolling dice and they were all thinking of the roll. And he changed, like he had these statistically impossible results because of the coherence in everyone's thoughts. He says he's done it with a water fountain that was, shooting up at one. They had cameras all around it, and he would think different thoughts, and the water would move. So I think that there's a realm, and you look at the universe. There's stars that are 73 trillion miles away. Like there's so much that we don't know, and it's just I hope I live a long time just so I can learn all this stuff. But anyway, yeah, that was fascinating. Psychedelics. My stance on psychedelics, you didn't ask that, is that I think they're wonderful. I think they should be legalized. I think they've helped a ton of people. I have tried them a couple times in my journey, and I really didn't get anything out of them. And the couple times that I did them, there happened to be people in there that had been doing it for a long, long time. And I just thought to myself, like, if this stuff really worked, why do they keep coming back and why are they in such a bad place? So we don't use, while I have nothing against them. And I think, frankly, in situations, maybe down the road when they're legal, I may put them into my toolkit with extreme cases. But I tried them; they didn't do much for me. And yeah, that's kind of again, nothing against them, but
No, I appreciate that. I don't speak openly a lot about, my views and takes. People have asked me various times, it's something I've dabbled in and explored here a little bit, but I think what you're speaking to is like, it's become this justification for people because there's a therapeutic nature to it that you get the people that haven't healed their trauma. They're still working from that, and they use it almost as like an excuse just to kind of get high. And it becomes like a whole new kind of religion in and of itself. It's like they quit the pharmaceutical drugs or the manufactured ones are like, oh, because it's from the earth. But it's like, yeah, why are you going every month? Or why are you continuing down these journeys? If it's truly healing and helpful, it should be almost like not a one and done, but it shouldn't be something that you need to continuously do over time.
so Frank, I agree with that. And I think most of the people or some of the folks in my experiences fit that exact model. However, I don't know if it's Netflix or whatever, where they have the series on psychedelics, where there was a place in Baltimore, like a treatment center for addicts. And I mean, it has done for some people with addictions, it is like mind blowing what it can do to go through like I tell you what, I have a good friend of mine whose son had severe depression and anxiety, and someone gave him LSD and he didn't know it. And he spent the night in the woods thinking he was going to die. No therapist around, no nothing. And till this day, 3 years later, he doesn't have anxiety or depression, and he's a completely different person. Now, does that happen to most people? No, but I know this stuff works. I just don't know. I think it's almost like you need to combine it with the therapy, with the work that I do. Like if someone wants to do it, go ahead and do it. But then let's break down everything while you're under the influence. Maybe it's easier for some people. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and I think it's John Hopkins, and maybe there's a few other institutions out there that are now bringing different forms. They're doing it, I believe, with psilocybin, MDMA, and it is making its way into the therapeutic space where people aren't just going into the woods in South Africa and trusting their best friend who's like, I read a book on it and I watched the documentary. It's like they are working with real professionals out there. Let's circle back here a little bit. We talked a lot about happiness, and you're wearing a shirt here, be addicted to self-love. I'd love to kind of open up the conversation around self-love. I have thoughts. Some of them this may be an area that we actually may disagree on here a little bit. I think self-love, the way that it's portrayed, not by you, but by a lot of people online, I think is in fact maybe a little bit harmful. And I'm happy to share why I believe that. But for you, what role does self-love play in the work, in the healing, in people finding happiness? And how do people actually grow in self-love or love themselves better, greatly? I'm not sure what the proper word there would be.
Yeah, I mean, lack of self love comes from, again, stories that you tell yourself, these untrue stories about something being wrong with you that were created, the meanings were created in order to get you through this stressful time. So if you can get to the point of, again, breaking down these limiting beliefs that are hidden in your subconscious mind, then you're going to stop telling yourself, do you, when you make a mistake, how do you treat yourself? I'm on the pickleball court this morning. The guy's like, call himself an idiot, or that's so stupid. I say silly boy now. That's like, instead of, I used to call myself an idiot. It's been a long time since I've caught myself saying something negative. So cut out the negative self-talk, because when you say something negative, your body and your brain doesn't know the difference between you or a total stranger. So you release the negative chemicals, including cortisol, which is an inflammatory, and most disease and sicknesses are due to inflammation. So to me, self-love is going back to when you were born, because we all are just light and love. And it's not, I love myself more than you, I'm better than anyone, I'm not any worse than anyone. It's just having the love for the soul that you are, not the body that you were giving, not the looks, because that's not who you are, not your name, not your profession, your essence. I love my essence, and frankly, I love everyone's essence. Are there people that do bad things in the world? I'm trying to get away from even the whole thing about bad or good, which we should get into. Are there people who perceive to do things that are bad? Potentially, but were they born with the same soul as the next guy? Absolutely. So it's just about having an appreciation for, there's no flaws within you. It's just you're just light and love at the end of the day.
What role do you think discipline plays in self-love? And let me maybe kind of add, because this is something I've come to maybe over the last year or so. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people, coached hundreds of guys in the last year, right? And I think for me, discipline, structure within your life, like doing the things that are moving you closer towards that ultimate version, is the highest form of self-love. Like discipline in what you put into your body, form of self-love. Discipline in getting into the gym, playing pickleball, form of self-love. Discipline in growing intellectually and growing spiritually, form of self-love, right? You think about your father. I'm not a parent. I got a dog that's laying on the floor next to me, right? I love him. He's my best friend in the world. But I put structure into his life. I just don't let him run free throughout the neighborhood. Like he's on a leash. He lives at home, right? He's contained within these walls. I think we love our pets by structure and disciplining them. I think, those that are parents love their kids by structure and disciplining them. So if there's an element of discipline and structure in how we love others, I believe that that's actually how one of the highest forms that we can love ourselves. I'll just toss that to you, and I'm curious kind of your thoughts as like, this is really your area of work.
You asked some amazing questions. Another one. So I don't know how your program works. Obviously, we haven't talked about that. And there are some people whose program is all based on discipline. Like, okay, you want to lose 30 pounds. Let's get you to lose a pound first, and we're going to lose a pound by muscling through and doing this, this, and this. That works for some people. I think that's the exception, though. I think discipline and willpower are really, really freaking hard when you have these limiting beliefs. So the person who weighs 100 pounds more than she should, I'm just going to use a woman as an example because why not? Um, Go tell her that you just need to stop eating at night. Well, what if she was molested as a child and she actually said, I just wish I was bigger so he would stop this, or whoever, you know? So she ate a bunch. Go tell her, just discipline through it. There's a thing called the ACE studies, adverse childhood experiences. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
It's a enormous study that was undertaken by one of the big pharmaceutical companies, I think, years ago. And here's why it started. Well, let me tell you what it is first. It's on a scale of 0 to 10. If you grew up in a house and all of your needs were met, you had zero adverse childhood experiences. If you had 10 adverse childhood experiences, that means you saw your parents fight, you were hit, you were molested, whatever, like just all the bad shit that could happen to you. The higher the number, the more likely you are to be raped as an adult, more likely you are to be incarcerated, have mental issues, be poor, on and on. So why did this whole study start? Because there was a weight loss doctor that was having a lot of success in California. And all these women start dropping out of his program. So he goes and he interviews them, and they're like, we were afraid that if we kept losing more weight, our attackers would come back. So their limiting belief was causing them to eat. So discipline, go tell those ladies to be disciplined and be like, what? You can't stop eating, you're not disciplined. So I think some people can push through with discipline, but I think a majority of the population lack discipline, not because there's something wrong with them, but because they have those hidden beliefs that they're not even aware of.
Yeah, no, I appreciate I appreciate that, and our program and our approach isn't solely rooted in discipline. It's a core component. I think my experience has been when you truly start loving yourself, and maybe it's not right away with what you put into your mouth or stopping a behavior with pornography, but we'll begin to become disciplined in a lot of other areas. Because I think small micro wins stacked up over time can really change the confidence in which you see yourself. So that's more the push that we're going to take, is we're going to start small micro wins before we get to the big thing that they believe is actually holding them back. But in reality, it's a perception of themselves, like you said. And then there's work that's integrated into that probably doesn't get to exactly the same what's getting to the same root. It's not going to be the same approach, but by stacking short micro disciplines over an extended period of time, paired with the deeper inner work of root cause, childhood, this and that. And I'm also not going to say that I claim to be a therapist. There's many guys that we work with that will simultaneously work with somebody like yourself or an Ani, or they have another person that's unpacking, because that's not my area of expertise. I'm on the behavioral change side of things. So I appreciate that, and I definitely believe that it's not going to work for everybody, because I'm assuming that there are levels to this childhood trauma, right? I think it was Annie that said that anybody that is an adult walking this earth has something about their past that is going to be, because trauma, her language, is a frame of how the story, like it's all just rooted into like a story component. So everybody has that, but I guess there's probably levels to it, right?
So I mean, yes and no. Yes, in if you have a 10 on the childhood, adverse childhood experiences, yeah, that's different than being a 1. However, I've seen over and over and over again, kids come from similar situations and they just perceive things completely different. So your sister may come home from the hospital when you're a baby or being born. She was being born, and you thought your parents, because they had to pay more attention, they loved her more than they loved you, and therefore you weren't lovable. That could create someone, becoming a meth addict. Whereas some people might be like, okay, that's not a big deal. So yes, there's levels, but it's so interesting how different people. I mean, some people can go and be locked in a cage for a year and come out and be okay, whereas someone could be spanked and they're, worse than the person locked in a cage. So it's just how our body or our mind adjusts or adapts or, copes with it.
Yeah. And is there any analysis, I guess, in understanding that person, or does this bring back into the conversation like the soul, you're here, past, this past lives, I guess, in your belief play a role in how we process and go through and experience some of these traumas?
I mean, look, no one really knows, right? I've read enough about past life stuff that I wouldn't say it's not possible. It's possible. That's all I can say.
Getting into the work here a little bit, last 10 minutes or so that we have. What is it you guys do? It Unlock Limitless You. That's the organization over there. Can you kind of walk us maybe through the framework and who's the ideal person that is for? And obviously we'll have the test and the website and all that stuff kind of plugged down podcast there below. But like if you had to say this is the ideal kind of avatar that we can specialize, like I'm very clear, right? Like high driven, successful entrepreneur business guys out there that are struggling with a pornography addiction. That's our bread and butter. If somebody comes in and they in the form I can see that, I'm like, I know I can help this guy transform every single area of his life. So for you, who's that kind of like avatar?
I mean, kudos for you to narrowing down like that, because all super smart marketers do that. We have struggled with that because so many people have come to us and we've been able to help them through depression, OCD, addiction, overworking, racing mind, marriage problems. So it's really anyone that has these limiting beliefs that are causing negativity in their life and they haven't been able to stop the negativity. We just happen because I've been an entrepreneur, on and off since I was in 7th grade selling blow pops. So we've attracted a lot of entrepreneurs. Is that everyone? No. If we attracted people that work, for someone, absolutely. It's really just anyone who is suffering or struggling. I want you to know that that's not why you were meant. You shouldn't be suffering or struggling, no matter what you say. Like, oh, this is just my life, or I deserve this, or I'm going to stay in this shitty marriage, or I'm going to stay in this job for another 20 years, even though I don't like it. Like, no, 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 no. Life is meant to be joyous. It's meant to be abundant. It's meant to be shared with deep connections with other human beings. And if you don't have that now, it's not your fault. You just have to go back and uncover these limiting beliefs that actually helped you probably for some part in your life that are just not serving you now. And when you do that, man, everything in your life will change, as you know, and as I've lived, Frank.
Yeah, I think the higher percentage of people that are attracted to work like what you and what I do in podcasting, it just falls into the entrepreneurship category, right? Because people that are entrepreneurs understand that, like, I got to grow, I got to evolve, I got to hire people, I got to hire coaches, how do you get to where you want to be faster? Pay the person that's already there to show you the pathway, right? So I just think that there's an element of kind of the work that we do that just attracts those type of people. You have a category of people that are fixed, right? And I'm curious your thoughts on like growth versus fixed mindset, but Carol Dweck's book does a great job of kind of explaining the two, right? Growth, like we can grow and we should, and we actually find the joy in the journey to growth, not the destination. Fixed, I am the way that I am, right? Like this is just me. Like why aren't I happy or successful? Because I'm not enough, but I also don't believe that I can ever be enough. Those people are going to for one, they're not listening to podcasts on self-development. They're not out there exploring. Like they're thrusted in the culture and kind of the prison of society. So here's a big question: like, how do we reach those people? Maybe neither one of us have the answer, and it just kind of came to me as we're talking. Like, how do we get the person that is like in the prison but doesn't even know it?
Doesn't even know. Yeah. So I'm studying under this guy now who says that it's not, so many life coaches and therapists say, well, it didn't work because they didn't do the work or they weren't motivated. And he's like, no, it's our job to get them motivated. So while I don't have a perfect answer, I think it's just convincing these folks through, tools like you probably have and I have with the self-love quiz, like, hey, your life could be a lot better. Do you have problems in relationships? Do you have self-destructive behavior? Do you talk negatively to yourself? Do you get, often triggered? Do you take things personally? Well, if you do any of those things, then you likely have some limiting beliefs that are holding you back, not in one area of your life. I think you alluded to this earlier. You talked about the dominoes falling, I think, is someone will come to me with, hey, I've got a racing mind. And then we fix that. And then their finances go up and they start making more money. Or the person who was like, I finished with him a year ago and he's just on this amazing trajectory. He's like, Brad, I was at the beach and I was staying on the 17th floor and it was really strange. I was looking over and I wasn't scared. He was like, could that be having to do with the work that we did? Because he came to me with like anger issues. And I'm like, of course it could, because everything is routed in fear. And when we fix fear in one area of your life that stopped the anger, now you're starting to see it just take all the other ones out. So
Yeah, I had that breakthrough, man, pretty early on in the work. Like I thought, when I started, rebuilt recovery, like I was helping guys quit pornography. Like I was going to be this savior in their life. They were going to stop this behavior. And it's like, that's like the smallest thing that changes in their life. Their relationships drastically improve, their health, their fitness gets on par. Many guys like excel financially. We've had guys launch new businesses in a short window of time, become profitable. We've had promotions created. We've had partnerships formed. Like it's just exponential in every single area of your life. With you, man, we talked about the fitness. I think living in purpose probably plays a role in your happiness. Like, what are some things that you do daily? So talking kind of habits here, like if there are any, like habits that Brad does that contribute to his self-love and his happiness.
I got a pretty dialed in routine. I don't get out of bed without meditating. And then I give the dog a walk and go to the gym. I spend like 3 or 4 hours in the gym. I mentioned this already, but real quick, pickleball, which is amazing connection with other people and myself. Yoga, I've started doing that on a daily basis. The sauna, which I think is really important, lifting weights. And then at night, I meditate. I stop watching the news. I have a journal. I manifest. I have a journal that I am sure that. So as Joe Dispenza teaches, I start living as if it's already happened, and I attach an emotion to it. And then we have this tool called the Joy Regenerator, where anytime you're in a negative state, I run this process through my mind, and it's simply, if you're in a negative state, you're in fight or flight, which means you're going back to the past. So anytime I get in a fight or flight, I just say, what am I feeling? I'm feeling scared. And I say, it's okay, Brad, you're feeling scared or anxious or upset. Where's this coming from? And I now know, because I've done it for 3 years, everything is rooted in the initial thought creates the emotion, because your body wants to create a reaction. Like, the lion's chasing me. Oh shit, lion. I'm going to get nervous. I'm going to get scared. It's going to pump blood to my legs so I can run. So the thought creates the emotion. The emotion creates the action. And so I ask myself, where is this feeling of scared or frightened or anger coming from? Well, because I'm not enough. And then I say, is that true? Of course it's not true. I am enough. So why am I going to stay in this negative emotion based on something that's not true? And then I just snap out of it. So I read a lot. I study a lot. I work with clients. I learn so much through the work that I do. And then I try to get out in nature a lot. I play a lot of golf. I I wake surf. I kite surf. I have a boat. I'm out on the water a lot.
I love it, man. I love it. Brad, tell the guys where they can find you, connect with you. Obviously, we'll have the quiz plug down there below. Any upcoming things that you are excited about launching maybe later this year, and we'll wrap it up with our last and final question.
Yeah. So unlocklimitlessyou.com/Brad has every one of my social media handles. It's got the podcast. It's got the self-love quiz. It's even got my contact information. If you're struggling, if you're suffering, you want to pick up the phone and call my cell phone, do it. Exciting stuff. My vision is a year from now, my daughter graduates, and I'm going to spend a lot of time on the water, kind of South Florida and the Bahamas, doing what I do. I'm going to get one of Elon's satellites, things for the high speed internet. Have people down on excursions, do some Zoom coaching calls. We just launched last week a weekly mastermind thing that's super affordable. So the people that can't make the investment in the program. So yeah, we got a lot of great things. We just continue literally on a weekly basis, improving the program. And I'm just excited about helping more people. I want to get to the point, Frank, that I can have a solution that the girl in India who's about to take her life and has $4 can do. That's what I'm working towards. I'm 51 years old. I'm manifesting. I'm going to live to be 110. I'm a complete health and longevity nut. So for the next 60 years, I've got 60 years to come up with this. And I'm going to do it. But I need help. I need people like you helping me on the, being on your podcast. And I'm trying to put together a group right now of people who believe in some mission that we can help 1 billion people radically change their lives and change this planet. Because I think we can. I really believe it.
Yeah, I love it, man. Love the mission and see it happening. And we touched on it before we hit record here. Hit me up when you make it down to the Florida area. I'd love to catch up and whatever it is we do out there, right? Helping and serving the world. And I love the mission about bringing this. Obviously, the podcast is great. It's free. We've been downloaded in 120 plus countries at this point, but we're working on something big that's going to bring our services in a very cost efficient way to the masses there as well. So I love that, Brad. We'll have all that plugged down there in the show notes for you guys. So connect with Brad, check out the quiz, his socials, his podcast, all that good stuff for you guys down there in the show notes. Last question, Brad. Title of the show obviously is called The Superhuman Life. I used to have this whole kind of thing where I shared what my belief was, but I don't think it's necessary anymore. So as we close out today's conversation, Brad, Chandler, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Wow. So I think when we're on our deathbed, there's going to be 2 things we're going to be thinking about. We're going to be thinking about the impact that we made in this world, and we're going to be thinking about the connections with the people who meant the most to us in our lives. So I think that if you can have deeply connected connections with the people that are important in your life and you can make an impact, I think that's living a superhuman life.
Well stated. And I would agree wholeheartedly with that, man. So guys, connect with Brad, unlocklimitlessyou.com. Check out the podcast. Share this episode. We've asked you over these past couple of weeks. We're trying to double the audience reach, and it's a simple mathematical formula. If every single person listening to this right now shared it with just one person, that would double the listenership. 1 + 1 does equal 2, guys. So help us in reaching that milestone here this week, guys. But for Brad Chandler, unlocklimitlessyou.com, your host, Coach Frank Rich here, guys. We love you. We'll see you in the next one.